If you want to help out and support the channel, there are a few things you can do. Go check out Flipside Gaming and use the promo code VOIDMAGE in all caps. This will get you 10% off all orders $10 or more. And if you go shopping on tcgplayer.com, go use my affiliate link in the description below. That way all purchases you make will go towards helping the channel. And lastly, go check out my Patreon. It's a more direct way that you can help the channel while also getting some more interaction. I appreciate all of your support. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to another Commander Deck Tech video, another monthly patron request, this time for new patron William Grove. For the very first one, William wanted me to do the partner commanders Sidar Kondo of Jamurra and Ikra Shidiqi the Usurper. Very odd names, I hope I pronounced both of those right. So for the goal of the deck, he wanted me to focus on high toughness and pretty much making our creatures unblockable, which is pretty easy to do in this deck because Sidar Kondo of Jamurra makes it so that creatures our opponents control without flying or reach can't block creatures with power 2 or less. He also has flanking, so whenever a creature without flanking blocks this creature, the blocking creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Obviously, the main reason why we want to use him is to make our creatures unblockable. And I should point out, it's creatures with power 2 or less, not just yours. So if your opponents want to swing in at each other, tell them to go for it. He's also a 2/5, so he has a lot of toughness there, which works out well with our other partner commander, Ikra Shidiqi. 3/7 with Menace, also really high toughness. That Menace is going to make it easier for her to swing in uncontested. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. So if everything works out well, Sidar should be able to swing in turn 5 after you play your Ikra Shidiqi, and then you'll be able to gain 5 life off of that. But we have plenty of ways to fool around with these creatures. Let's start off the deck tech with the land base. Most of it is going to be mana fixing. We do have some really good utility ones like Bajuka Bog, just to deal with those pesky graveyard decks. There is a Murmuring Bosk, which sometimes is useful if we have a Tree Folk card in our hand. I'm mostly wanting to play it because it gives us that mana fixing, but more importantly, it is a forest, which does come into play for a specific card, and we could of course also search it up for land-specific search cards. Rogue's Passage is a must-have for pretty much any deck that's combat-oriented. You're not always going to have it so that your creatures are unblockable. This pretty much makes it a sure thing. And there's also the card Forbidding Watchtower. Comes into play tapped, but we can just pay 2 mana to have it become a 1/5 white soldier creature token until the end of turn. It's really nice to have this in combination with Ikra Shidiqi, because hopefully we can just attack an opponent and gain 5 life. Now before I get on to the really good stuff in the deck, I have to go over some necessary ramp. In artifact form we have Soul Ring, but we also have the new Arcane Signet, which is something I would recommend for decks that play 3 or more colors. And why not play all 3 of the signets? We want to make sure that we're able to play our commanders when we really need them, and get really whatever mana you need with an Abzan banner. Worst case scenario, we can just pay that 3 mana to sack it so that we can draw a card. In sorcery form, we have Farseek, Cultivate, and Kodama's Reach. The Farseek is really good because we can go get shock lands from our deck, or really any of those dual lands, making it even easier to get the mana that we need. Treefolk Harbinger is a treefolk in the deck, just a 1 mana green creature. I really like it because it can help you get a land drop if you missed one, or if you think you're about to miss one. It comes into play, you may search your library for a treefolk or a forest card, you reveal it, and then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. There's a really good treefolk in the deck I'm going to talk about in a minute, but it's really nice having a creature like this. It also follows the theme of high toughness. It's just 3, but it's higher than what you would expect for just 1 mana. And we also have the awesome Sylvan Caryatid Defender Hexproof, so you know it's going to stay out there for a while. Another 0/3 creature, but it can tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And although it's technically not ramp, it's still another high toughness creature that's going to help us stay in the game with our land drops. Wildfield Scarecrow, we can pay 2 to sacrifice it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them into our hand. This is a pretty underrated card. I know Burnished Heart is capable of putting 2 lands onto the battlefield, but this does have the benefit of high toughness. Now all decks are going to need good card draw, and I think we have plenty of it. Lifecrafter's Bestiary, we can pay a green every time we cast a creature spell to draw a card. At the beginning of our upkeep we scry one, so it's a very good card if we just want to get through our deck a little bit quicker. Well of Lost Dreams is a must-have in any sort of life gain deck. because you can pay X equal to the total life you gain in order to draw those many cards. Read the Bones is very good in black because we get to scry 2 first and then decide what cards we want to draw into. And then we have Driven to Despair. The Driven part is what's really going to draw us the cards, but if we also cast the Despair, we give Menace to all of our creatures, and we could force a player to discard a bunch of cards. Both Wall of Blossoms and Wall of Omens are pretty much the same card, 4 toughness walls that are going to enter the battlefield and draw us a card. Abzan Beastmaster is an upkeep draw, and we do draw if we have a creature with the greatest toughness, or tied for the greatest toughness. Mentor of the Meek is perfect for this deck because a lot of our creatures are power 2 or less. One of our commanders is power 2 or less. It's nice if you only have to pay an additional mana to draw a card. And Orin Viper is really sweet because with Sidar, it's pretty much going to be unblockable. When it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card, and if it deals combat damage to a creature, you destroy that creature at the end of combat. Although it's technically not card draw, it is a way to accelerate our deck. Twilight Prophet, kind of like a better Dark Confidant in its ability. If we have the City's Blessing, we reveal the top card of our library. We get to put it into our hand, and each opponent loses X life, and we gain X life, where X is that card's converted mana cost. Another high toughness creature that's probably going to be able to attack, and it also adds on to the life gain strategy. Another really sweet card is Orin Frostfang. This is pretty much a bigger Orin Viper, and it works for all of your creatures. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Really nice way that we can just refill our hand. And finally, Protector of the Crown is going to make us the Monarch. It's also a more defensive card. It has higher toughness. If damage would be dealt to us, it's instead dealt to Protector of the Crown. Very useful card. It's also good if your opponents have massive X-costed burn spells, because it'll just soak up all that damage. Now, on to probably one of the biggest strategies in this whole deck, and that is fooling around with high toughness. We want to make it so that our creatures are going to be dealing more damage than they probably should be. And for that, we have a few cards. We have Assault Formation, Doran the Siege Tower, Huatli the Sun's Heart, and Belligerent Brontodon. Now, all with the exception of Doran will pretty much make it so that only your creatures deal damage equal to their toughness. Doran just works for every creature. Most of our creatures have tiny power, but massive toughness. This is a combat-focused deck, so we definitely want at least one of these, so we can really start dishing out punishment. Now, these cards pretty much being the groundwork for what the deck is supposed to be, we're going to fool around with high-toughness creatures, or creatures that just synergize with high toughness. Ailey, Eternal Pilgrim, is not really a big creature, but we can sacrifice another creature to gain life equal to its toughness, and once we have plenty of life, her second ability is just really good removal. Spawn Wraith is just a filthy card if we can keep it going. With Sidar, it should be able to keep giving us more and more copies. If left unchecked, this can get out of hand. We have Rock's Faithmender, which works out really well with Ikra Shidiqi. We are gaining a bunch of life off of high toughness. Also a high toughness creature. If we would gain life, we gain twice that much life instead. Tree of Perdition is also a pretty nasty card. Really nice combination with Ailey Eternal Pilgrim. Could help us to gain a whole bunch of life. Antrostani Celestia's Voice is a no-brainer for this deck. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we gain life equal to its toughness. We're not really playing a bunch of tokens aside from the Spawn Wraith, but it's always nice to have that option. Revulark is a really good recovery card. When it leaves the battlefield, we get to return 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. Silklash Spider is pure utility here. Activated ability is going to help us get rid of those pesky flying creatures. Also a quality 2/7 with reach. And probably the big butts tribal card, Oathsworn Giant. Other creatures we control get +0/+2 and have vigilance. So if your creatures aren't fat enough, with this they will be. Pontiff of Blight, a 2/7 creature, very good stats for the deck. We have Extort on all of our creatures. So if we want to gain a bunch of life really quickly, every time we cast a spell, we could dump, 2 or 3 extra mana into it, and that's how much life we're draining from our opponents. We could be gaining 9 life every time we do that. We have some really sweet ways that we can take advantage of our low power creatures with cards like Meekstone and Crackdown. If creatures with power 3 or greater can't untap, it's going to make it so that our tiny creatures are going to be able to swing in uncontested, and whatever's able to block it is likely not going to be big enough to stop it anyway. Behind the Scenes is another really good card. Skulk is a good keyword, making it even more difficult for our opponents to block our creatures, and we have some good board wipes that synergize really well with high toughness creatures. Retribution of the Meek, bury all creatures power 4 or greater. Fell the Mighty, destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. A lot of our creatures are going to be power 2 or 3. Wave of Reckoning, each creature deals damage to itself equal to its power, again works out well in our deck. And then we have Dusk, we can destroy all creatures power 3 or greater. Dawn is another way that we can get a bunch of our creatures back from the graveyard. As long as they have power 2 or less, this is going to be a fun card to fool around with. Other really cool cards that we can take advantage of, not necessarily because of high toughness, but just because we can make our creatures unblockable pretty easily. We have Virtus the Veiled and Gorm the Great. Virtus has Death Touch, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. Gorm the Great has Vigilance, must be blocked if able, and has to be blocked by 2 or more creatures if able. These two are really nice because if you're able to attack with both of them, you will most certainly hit with Virtus so that you can then cut someone's life total in half. We have other things that do something similar to Virtus. We have Raving Dead. It is random, but it still pretty much does the same thing. If you want to have this ability on any creature, you could use Quiet as Spike. You can give the equipped creature Death Touch, and whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, the same thing happens. It's always nice to have something like this if you want to cut someone's massive life total in half, make it a little bit easier to kill them with combat damage. Another good thing that I can recommend in this deck is that since we have those Door in the Siege Tower cards, another really cool thing to pair it up with is Double Strike. So Aketra the True and Zetalpa Primal Dawn are two really powerful creatures if we really want to get our combat going. If you can make it so that they deal damage equal to their toughness instead, you can gain a bunch of life off of Ikra Shidiqi, you'll gain some off the first strike and then the normal combat damage, making it much easier to increase our life total. And these are just really solid creatures with awesome keywords anyway. Now finally, I want to talk about some good instants. We have Swords to Plowshares and Anguished Unmaking, giving you a little bit of the removal package you're used to seeing in these colors. There's also Sylvan Reclamation if you want to deal with 2 artifacts and or enchantments. But these last few cards I'm really into. Arachnogenesis is pretty much a Spider Fog, but we get 1/2 green spider creature tokens with Reach. Ready and Willing is another very good combat card. Creatures we control get indestructible until the end of turn, and we untap those creatures, and the Willing part makes it so that creatures we control gain Death Touch and Lifelink until the end of turn. So overall, very good abilities, probably going to kill off some creatures while gaining a bunch of life. And a really sweet one here is Reach of Branches. It's a tribal instant tree folk. We can put a 2/5 green Treefolk Shaman creature token onto the battlefield, and whenever a forest enters the battlefield under our control, we get to return this card from our graveyard to our hand. May not seem like a lot, but that's 5 mana instant speed to get 5 toughness out there. If you wanted to take this deck in more of a Treefolk direction, this is a card I would most certainly recommend. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks again to William Grove for becoming a newer patron. I enjoyed making this deck for you. The link to everything will be in the description box below if you want to see the full deck list, the price, and also if you wanted to check out the Patreon, the link to that will be in the description below. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video. Just wanted to say thanks to the patrons who are supporting me on patreon.com. Go check it out. There are different tiers with their own rewards. One of them is having your name in the credits of my videos. I know it's not much, but it's something that I can do to show my appreciation. Thanks again and have a good day.